God is good that she's here and she's focused.
I mean, for me, I think similar to the public advocate, I grew up in a household that didn't have my dad present at home every day. That didn't mean that he wasn't present in his own way. And it just, the realization that sometimes relationships, right, between intimate partners don't always work out. And I think that's something that I didn't understand until I became probably in my 30s, when it dawned on me, being married for almost 10 years now, right, that relationships are hard to maintain. But in retrospect, wishing, I think, like the other guy said, that dad was home. So it was that lack of male presence that left a lack of covering for the household. Being a provider for my household and having a wife who also makes money, I wonder now how my mom supported us on one income. I wondered how the bills came every 21 days opposed to every 30 days. How we ate every day, how it was taken care of. But so for me, it was like, I think the blessing was having positive male influences. So what I didn't have at home, I got in church communities and YMCAs and all these other rec centers. So starting to pull from that stuff and not looking at it from a deficit perspective, but almost kind of realizing I had multiple fathers and multiple mentors that I was able to pull from. So for me, it was, but having that presence at home, how to shave, I still don't know how to shave, which is why my beard is so long. It's not fashion saving, but not having those tools and techniques that you learn how to tie a tie, I think those things would have been important things that was coming up. But blessed and happy that my father's still alive and we're able to build a strong relationship, and I could see it from a different perspective being older now. So kick it over to the youngest guy in the panel.
For me, similarly, my story started the same. My dad left when I was, I want to say 12 years old, but I got sent with him, my dad. So, as I became an adolescent, I started being too much for my mom, right? Because here my mom is trying to work, trying to do all these things, and I want to stay out late, right? So she's coming, so I'm beating my mom at 12, 13 years old, home, right? So, she's, Caribbean woman, right? She's enraged, right? Like, what do you, you're 13 years old, like, why are you playing basketball? Because we found a court that had the lights still up. So we was playing till, till the lights came out. Lights wasn't going out till 1 a.m. So we was playing till, so my mom was like, how is it that I'm coming home before you, right? So, and then just her not being able to handle it, and now being older, understanding. So like, she sent me, like, for the summer, you're going to your dad's. So like, I spent the whole summer with my dad every single day, right? So, talking to him every day. My dad had this thing where, so it was me and all my brothers, so he had this thing called Be a Man Camp, right? So, for the Haitians, it's called Be a Man Camp, right? Where like every morning he woke us up at 5 and we had to garden, so we had to go plant tomatoes and corn, right, in the garden. And then by like 8, 9 o'clock, we had to like drink tea. So there was, and my dad came from the Haitian military, right? So it was very regimented, like, we had to be up to garden, we had to drink the tea, we had to fix this, we had to fix the car. If we're going here, we're going over here. So it was like an everyday regimen, being with my dad, right? And then after spending that summer, me and my brothers being with my dad, the whole summer when it was time to go back, we didn't want to go back, right? So I was at a place where I was like, Mom, I want to stay by dad, right? So then my mom worked from 1 p.m. to 11. Right? So by the time I got out of school, I was at my dad's house, right? So I got a chance to really be with him more than I was with my mom, right? So of course, a lot of the good and the bad, right? The bad habits too, felt on me. But my understanding of fatherhood, being with my father 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, even more than I was with my mother, kind of gave me a different perspective. And my father, who has 9 children from 2 different women, right, understanding the dynamics of that and how proud he is. Like if he was here right now, he'd say, I got 9 kids. He's so proud of that, right? So I kind of, wanted that too, right? Like that that pride of like, I got 9 kids, and yes, I don't care if it's 2 women, and I know they hate me, but these are my kids, right? And I'm gonna make sure that they're good. So that's kind of the perspective that I got. And of course, there was a lot of, things that he didn't have right. Coming from a Caribbean island, right? A lot of the cultural competences didn't transfer, to America. So there were a lot of negatives and a lot of bad habits that we had to navigate around. But I think, to answer your question, my purview for fatherhood was looking at all of the meat and leaving the bones from growing up being around my dad a lot.
So you're talking about generational traditions, cultural expectations, whether they be the good or the different. How did you take those now roles into your life of, I want to, have my own family, and now looking at how healthcare, so all 3 of you are from households that were led initially by women, and then fathers were involved to an extent. How does that now look as, again, you're building your own family, you're considering your own family, and then looking at what the disparities that were shown in the movie about how you're going to be treated walking in the door. So we heard the statistics of Black women 3 to 4 times more having the expectation that things are not going to go well, from the sublime to the extreme. Did any of those conversations, any of those thoughts sort of pop up like, wow, how is my family going to be treated? Is it education that I need? Is it connection to community that I need? Is it income that I need? What are those things that might, what about Jeff, if you would speak first, that might have popped into your head of like, how is this gonna go?
And by the way, I was women in my household from birth to now. Even the dog was like, I have like it's crazy. My mother, my sister, now my wife, and 14-year-old, and 8-year-old. I'm gonna add on top of that, my dad, my rest in peace, is an OBGYN. So this was his field. My sister is a nurse practitioner, so healthcare. My mother, I always say she's a drug dealer, but she's a pharmacist. So healthcare was all around. One thing that struck me was when it was Shawnee Gibson saying she thought knowledge would protect her. So I knew healthcare she was like not great to Black and brown folks. I didn't know the magnitude of Black mortality, Black maternal mortality. And I had spoken about this before. I didn't even realize how bad my wife's care was going until we got a doctor that cared. Because it seemed to me like, oh, it's going okay. And my wife was telling me things, and I was thinking, well, the doctor's saying this, so we should probably do this. And then we found the doctor that cared, and whoa. When I look back, like, yo, they was trying to take her uterus from the beginning. It wasn't hearing anything she had to say. She was clear that she wanted to have children. They didn't give us any options about eggs, nothing. Like, it just was nothing. And even the test results on some of her cancer results was showing things that they never told us about. And by the time we found out, it was too late for some of the options that we wanted to have children. Like, it was real bad.
Right. Actually, I want to pop in just to sort of add this level. So why I brought up family and history is how many of us in our families actually had reproductive health care conversations? Did our grandparents, if our grandparents, maybe they were a midwife, maybe they worked for, a medical, the medical industry. But did we ever have these sort of not preventive, but proactive conversations of, so, just so you know, maybe in our family, women may have, smaller cervix, whatever. For the most part, probably we didn't. And so this generation is probably the first one to say, wait a minute, I don't really know what the options are. Maybe it's just that things are gonna be removed and then there are no more options. I think we're like maybe the first generation, or maybe second, to be advocating for our own selves and to ask questions. So you definitely shared that.
Well, funny you say that, right? Because the conversations around maternal health in our households, growing up in my household, was don't have sex, right? That was the conversation. That was the beginning
Anybody else
of the
anything else?
conversation. And the conversation went that when you were of the right age, you would find a partner, you would have sex, and you would have a child. So the assumption for me growing up between, I won't even say the age, but like from 0 to 21 was, if I have sex with someone, they're gonna get pregnant.
That was it.
And that's gonna be it, and
And
I'm gonna be
you're
a
gonna
dad.
help.
And I'm gonna help because I did it before I was married, right? So that was the conversation. But the other part of it, which is ironic, is that the public advocate just mentioned his father was an OBGYN. The space that we're in right now is actually an OBGYN, and the OBGYN for my wife, right? So growing up, we grew up not too far from here, so I'm literally we're inside an OBGYN office having this conversation, which is now our district office, and our focus is on maternal health. But that focus only shifted in we got married in 2012. By 2015, we had spent a great deal of time focused on our careers. Because again, growing up, I grew up in a household with one income. So for us, income was important, making sure that we could take care of whatever child we had. But by year 3, we were realizing something's not happening here around pregnancy, right? Like as a child, you're told you have sex, you have a child. Now we're married for 3 years, we're having sex, we're not having a child, right? So we go to a doctor, and to talk about care, the doctor just kind of said, everything is fine, just keep trying, you'll be fine. Fast forward 2018, I had just finished this campaign that I was running for city council. And at this point, we want to focus now on having a child and a family. And it's the first time we hear the word endometriosis, ovarian cysts, fibroids, and we're told that this is stage 3 or 4, right? So imagine we went to the doctor, because we have healthcare, in 2013, and the doctor we see in 2018 is the doctor we see in 2014, and the doctor goes, yeah, we told you. No, you told us to go keep trying, and everything was fine, right? So for us, this conversation and having these conversations are important because you really have to understand that we're not just referring to the right to have a child and not have a child with a woman's reproductive organs. We're talking about their right to live, their right to exist. That's a part of their body. So these conversations need to happen. And so I'm so happy. I remember when the public advocate had shared his story about a year and a half ago about it gave me some comfort in hearing another black man tell their story, and allowed me to share mine about white. And then the amount of emails and phone calls we got from women who were now checking to see what was going on and asking the doctors the right questions, and women circling around and talking about both the holistic practices and the medical practices that they can engage in. So this conversation is important because it's health, right? And then we can talk about the other piece of it, which we always talk about, is when a woman brings forth a child into the world, it's knowing that the child can grow up safe. Right, psychological safety, the child won't be killed. We see too many of those stories as well. So that trauma effect that's already affecting their bodies and shutting their bodies down from even wanting to bring birth into the world, coupled with the reproductive issues, coupled with the environmental issues, it is a octopus, and at the center of it is healthcare and wellness, and everything else kind of springs from it.
Now I apologize, I have to head out, so I apologize. But you know, the amount of folks who came to me and my wife after we shared our story, it was amazing. And to me, like what we talk about growing up, you know, black and brown people had kids. That was the notion that was out there. Like you say, you have sex, you have a baby, that's it. To find out that first childbirth is miraculous. It's a miraculous thing, but it doesn't just happen automatically. And I think there is some shame in people when they find out they can't have children. That's what you're supposed to do. And trying to break that down is very, very important so people can speak about it. And we can break down some of the stigma and then get the care that is needed and deserved. One last thing I do want to say is it's a side issue, but I remember we also dealt with miscarriage. And when you went to that hospital, they acted like you got a headache. Like we were like, this is really traumatic for us. And the lack of empathy to that was amazing to me. Not just to my wife, to myself. The men don't usually get much anyway, so this space is good. But even for my wife, it was like really, really hard to watch what she was going through and not getting the empathy that she needed at the time.
I want to add to what he's saying, right, real quick. and I don't know when that happened, but I want to assume that you were already elected,
Yeah.
right? So imagine being in a position of power, right? And where everything you touch, so to speak, turns to gold, right? So you're at a position where, right, you're sitting in a position where you can literally, in a stroke of a pen, you're writing a law that's gonna change how everything happens. And now you're in a position, the most helpless position ever, right? So like the psychological impact of that, right? Of knowing that you could literally shake everything. It might even be a hospital that he funded. And now he's sitting there, right, in this power, with this power, can't do anything for her, can't do anything for himself. And I think that's part of the shock for men, right, who have to deal with that.
So just as he's heading out, thank you so much for opening up and for sharing the story and letting us know that it happens to many of us. Thank you so much for sharing. We'll continue. So, I think on that note, just a shifting of the conversation a little bit and getting to the moment of the safe space. So definitely it is very courageous, it's very powerful for the three of you, and now you're representing, to be able to come to a space to say, I don't know how I can continue to do what I'm doing and not have a moment, not have someone, an ear, not have a platform, and a space, physical, theoretical space to just say, yes, this has happened and I need answers. I went to the medical community and I was met with a lack of empathy for whatever the questions were, either the proactive maternal concerns or the reactive, something is not happening as it should, what am I supposed to do? Oh, just keep trying. And you're thinking, is it me? But maybe there are things that we're not told. So the conversation of endometriosis is something that women are still just coming to terms with. In this country, endometriosis is a word that's not a taboo word anymore in this country as of 2022. In South Africa, where I visited and had this conversation, I was asking this question, they said, oh no, it is such the taboo thing that yes, if someone, and maybe it happened in our families, and maybe, it's that auntie or that, cousin that, did not bring life into the world and nobody sort of knows, but nobody asks. And so it's very powerful that we're actually here today to sort of have those conversations and to say, to give space again to the brothers, because the focus is what? For the most part, it's on women. It's on the mothers, it's on the daughters, the women corral. What happens to the brothers? And so I think that's the shift that I want to take right now.
And to that point, really quickly, I think, the part that you asked about the what ifs, like, is it me? That's a real question that, men in general, we don't take good care of ourselves, right? So when this was happening, it did become a situation of, I need to go see a urologist and make sure that everything's okay, because sometimes the shift is always on the women, right? And the onus is they can't bear children, or there's a problem there when brothers, we be struggling sometimes too, right? With our nutrition, with our diet, with what's going on with us. So we both got checked. And